right, what's up? Welcome back. It is a snowy weekend here in Minnesota, and we're going to be talking about the product development process. Now, the first step in the product development process was to create my initial drawings. Now, in order to create drawings, you have to know all of your dimensions, right? Well, in this case, I didn't really know what crown height I wanted, so the only way to really know that is through trial and error. So basically, I determined 3 different potential heights, and I was gonna have the supplier create samples, and I did. I had the supplier create 3 different samples with 3 different heights just so I could kind of dial that in. From there, it was just round after round of, receiving in the product, taking the measurements, checking the fit, making sure it was what I wanted, and then making whatever recommendations needed to be made, sending it back to the supplier, and then basically rinse and repeat. All of the things that I was looking at are expectations that I have for a quality hat, right? With a really big focus on fit and shape. Now, dialing in the shape was by far the hardest part. It's not like it's like instant feedback where you're like working in this like sewing lab or something, right? Like I make these changes, I send my feedback to the supplier, and it takes weeks to see the results of that feedback. My third revision of samples are here. Let's take a look. I don't have like a workspace, so I have to use my office. All right, let's pop this open. All right. There she is. Sample revision 3. Let's test these out. This is the first one. This is smaller. The crown is definitely sized down on this one. Both of these have smaller circumferences. So at the last notch, this should fit my head perfectly. And it looks like it does. I'm not sure how I feel about the shape. It looks a little too square. I think the shape of the mold is causing the issue of not being able to drop it down further. So we got a new mold. This is the result of that, but I'm seeing that this feels way wider. If you look at it on my head, it feels way too blocky, if that makes sense. And obviously those are terms I can't go back to the manufacturer with. So I'm sitting here measuring what the deltas are. Having to describe shape and structural differences in a non-solid product is extremely difficult. Sometimes the dimensions would match up, but it just didn't look right? And like, how do you describe that, via email? It's very difficult. There's really only so much you can do with pictures, but it's part of the game, right? You have to do it. I've also been acquiring some tools along the way. Like you can see this one, this is to measure the inside circumference of the hats itself. Now, I really knew this existed, never thought I would ever need one, but here we are. And it just kind of highlights the fact that all of this would be so much easier if I had some sort of apparel background and understanding of the industry, but I don't. Now, after a few months, I got to the point where I am happy with my MVP. Now, MVP meaning my minimum viable product. And that doesn't mean like a cheap, bad, or like compromised version of the product. It just means that this product meets my quality standards, and I don't think it's ever really gonna be a finished product. So here it is. And my thought process on this is that there's always gonna be feedback. There's gonna be things that I miss, things that should be updated. So I don't think it's ever really gonna be truly a finished product. It's gonna be, a work in progress as time goes on. But here she is. you can see my logo on the front. I'm not gonna bring it closer because I'll lose focus here, but you can see on the side, it's like a trucker style hat, and I am so stoked about this. Now, I absolutely did not coin the term MVP for minimum viable product. I stole that from a book called The Lean Startup. Now, that book is really more geared towards like software, so you kind of gotta take it with a grain of salt with like physical product, because the feedback loop is quite a bit longer, but it still applies. Now that I'm happy with the product, it's time to send in the bulk order, which is scary. Now I got the final samples in from the bulk order, and the shape was slightly different from the original sample, so that's definitely something that we're gonna have to work through. I sent that feedback back to the supplier, and it sounds like there may be some issues with tolerances, but it's definitely something that we're gonna keep a close eye on. Now, I think I've mentioned this before, but I'm really bootstrapping this thing. So I really only have enough money for a small and a medium size in one color. So yeah, this is real garage startup. Now I do have some extra cash on hand, but I'm really trying to keep some reserves on hand so that I can feed a marketing drip so that I can get some traction on social. But really, that's it for this one. I think the next step here is to get the website going, start creating some marketing campaigns, which is something I'm very new at. Again, we're figuring all this out on the fly, but yeah, that's really all I have for this one. See you next time.